At the end of last week, you should have completed your paragraphs on Stave 2 and 3 of the novella. So you were supposed to be talking about how Scrooge immediately begins to change after Marley's visit. So in Stave 2, he almost cries immediately as soon as he sees his younger self and the solitary child neglected by his friends, abandoned of all help, which is Dickens' interpretation of the situation. And we talked about how you could link that back into Stave 1 because of the word solitary. So we can see that the solitary child becomes a solitary adult. So perhaps Scrooge is not completely to blame for his situation, and we do begin to feel some sort of sympathy for him. In Stave 3, Scrooge seems much more willing to learn from his experience. He's now submissive. He says he's learned a lesson that's now working on him, and he wants to profit by it. And we discussed the fact that even though he is beginning to transform into a better person, he still is missing the point. He wants to profit by it. He doesn't want society to profit by it. He individually wants to profit by it. So even though he's not quite there yet, he's beginning to change, and we very much see that when Scrooge sees the face of the surplus population in Tiny Tim, and he hung his head in shame. He's overcome with penitence and grief, so that we clearly see that Scrooge is beginning to transform in Stave 3. So you should very much have been tracking his burgeoning awakening, his burgeoning redemption. So today we are going to look at Stave 5. We're going to talk about how does Dickens present Scrooge in the opening novella and how that is linked to his final transformation in Stave 5, which is now complete. So a few words that you might want to try and get into your assignment. The word atone. It's originally a religious term meaning to make up for something bad or sinful you have done. He wanted to atone for his sins. I would like to atone for my lack of effort last lesson. So by the time we meet Scrooge in Stave 5, he's clearly wanting to atone for his previous sins, and he wants to become a better person. Another word that you might want to include is that Scrooge definitely is experiencing a rebirth. He's been completely revived, he's been reinvigorated by the lesson that he's learned from the ghost. So examples of this in a sentence is his rebirth was remarkable, his outlook on life was completely different. And finally, it would be really useful if you could reference how that this novella is an allegory for the Victorian audience, and an allegory is a symbolic representation which can be interpreted to reveal a hidden meaning, usually a moral or political one, and in this case A Christmas Carol is very much a moral and political story. It's got a message for the Victorian reader. So at the end of Stave 4, we saw Scrooge at his lowest point emotionally. He's a broken man, he's begging for the chance to atone. Once the third ghost disappears, the new Scrooge is presented by Dickens in a number of ways. Stave 5 conveys one of Dickens's key messages: everybody is capable of redemption. That's the allegory part. Dickens presents Scrooge as being completely transformed. Dickens loosely connects this to the Christian idea of rebirth. Scrooge is aware of his sin and is eager to turn away from his former life. Dickens revisits the theme of time through Scrooge's urgent desire to correct his errors. So you can make connections with Stave 1 here. So you can talk about how he is completely changed. So in Stave 5, he's now positive to others. He visits Fred's for dinner. He gives to charity. He goes to church. He raises Bob's wages. He orders the fires lit. All completely contrasting to Stave 1. So there's some questions that you might want to consider there. So what events in Stave 5 parallel the events in Stave 1? So why might Dickens have chosen this cyclical structure? And how have Scrooge's values changed across the course of the novella? This is an extract from Stave 5 where Scrooge wakes up in the morning. I don't know what to do, cried Scrooge, laughing and crying in the same breath, and making a perfect lacoon of himself with his stockings. I am as light as a feather. I am as happy as an angel. I am as merry as a schoolboy. I am as giddy as a drunken man. A Merry Christmas to everybody. A Happy New Year to all the world. Hello here, whoop, hello. So At the side, you'll see a little box that says, as we read this extract, you might find it helpful to make notes on Scrooge's actions, his dialogue, the description of the weather, his response. And we can see how he's completely changed. So he is now using these cliched similes, I'm as light as a feather, which completely contrasts Stave 1, where he says he walks with a stiffened gait. The dialogue that he's using, these short sentences, hello here, whoop, hello, a happy new year to all the world, and Merry Christmas to everybody, completely contrasts the way that he spoke to Fred in Stave 1. And we're used to him saying words like bar humbug, and now he's saying happy new year, hello, whoop, hello. He's completely changed. He frisked into the sitting room and was now standing there, perfectly winded. There's the saucepan that the gruel was in, cried Scrooge, starting off again and going around the fireplace. There's the door by which the ghost of Jacob Marley entered. There's the corner where the ghost of Christmas present sat. There's the window where I saw the wandering spirits. It's all right, it's all true, it's all happened, ha ha ha. Really, for a man who had been out of practice for so many years, it was a splendid laugh. So that difference in adjectives there from that big long list of adjectives that we saw in Stave 1. A most illustrious laugh, the father of a long, long line of brilliant laughs. I don't know what day of the month it is, said Scrooge. I don't know how long I've been among the spirits. I don't know anything. I'm quite a baby. Never mind, I don't care. I'd rather be a baby. Hello, whoop, hello here. He was checked in his transports by the churches ringing out the lustiest peals he had ever heard. Clash, clang, hammer, ding, dong, bell. Bell, dong, ding, hammer, clang, clash. Oh, glorious, glorious. Running to the window, he opened it and put out his head. No fog, no mist. Clear, bright, jovial, stirring cold. Cold, piping for the blood to dance to. Golden sunlight, heavenly sky, sweet fresh air, merry bells. Oh, glorious, glorious. Now remember, in the opening stage, Scrooge can't feel cold, he can't feel mist, he can't feel the weather because he's nothing touches him. Now he can feel that, he can feel the sunlight on his skin. So the pathetic fallacy there is it's absent. It's positive weather. He's enjoying it. He's completely changed. He's not carrying this dark atmosphere around with him anymore. What's today? Cried Scrooge, calling downward to a boy in Sunday clothes. Now remember, children are supposed to be scared of Scrooge. And the boy says, eh? Returned the boy, with all his might of wonder. That is not the way a child would have responded to him in Stave 1. So remember, children kind of have a sixth sense about people. They can sense when people are good and when they're bad. This is why the children avoid him in Stave 1. And here this boy is almost rude. Eh? Like, what? What are you on about? So he's completely changed here now. The way that people react to him is completely different. So in this extract, Dickens shows Scrooge demonstrating that he is now a redeemed character. He has a renewed energy and a sense of purpose. He scrambles out of bed. This verb highlights he has a renewed energy and a sense of purpose, and contrasts with the opening description of how he edged his way through life. Dickens loosely bases Scrooge's transformation on Christian principles. Scrooge experiences a type of rebirth. Like a newborn baby, Scrooge cries several times, sobbing violently. His clothes are symbolic of his change, either inside out and upside down. Scrooge glows with good intention, dispelling the darkness of his former life. His splendid laugh and his glow are similar to Fred's at the start of novella. The novella is an allegory to teach the selfish that greed robs a person of true happiness for themselves and others. Furthermore, Scrooge describes himself as light as a feather. This is significant because it gives a sense of Scrooge's physical change. Rather than the slow-moving, methodical man from the start of the novel, now he is leaping around without a care in the world. However, it also suggests that Scrooge no longer carries the burden of his old life, his greed and obsession with business. It is significant that Marley was weighted down by cash boxes, chains and padlocks. So was Scrooge, but now he is liberated. So that's an example of what you're heading for in your final paragraphs. You're basically going to be discussing how Scrooge has completely transformed his personality. So here we can look at just a few of the different quotes from that section. So the verb cried is lively and shows that Scrooge is excited. The perfect lacoon is a famous statue of a man in agony. So this similarly describes how he looks ridiculous in his stockings, but he's not bothered about it. He's quite happy to look stupid. And the cliched similes shows how light-hearted Scrooge is, and remember, you can compare that to the stiffened gait of his walk in the opening stave. His dialogue now echoes Fred's words. He typically says "bar humbug," but he's now a changed man and he's happily shouting his Christmas wishes to all. His sentences are short. The exclamation mark show is childlike, gives the impression that he's skipping. And the verb frisk suggests that he's moving lightly, again contrasted with the stiffened gait of the opening stave. He repeats his thoughts out loud. He remembers the events with joy. He's glad that they have changed him. His speech is reduced to laughter, showing how cheerful he's become. The adjective illustrious means well known. It's become a typical part of his life. He's going to be happy. So another example paragraph that you could use that follows the what, how, why approach. In this extract from the end of the novella, we see Scrooge as a reformed character, where he is described with the verbs tight-fisted and grasping in Stave 1. In the final section, we see him through the simile light as a feather. The similes that Scrooge uses in his dialogue show how cheerful he is. They are cliched ideas that carry a sense of his new carefree spirit. When we first met Scrooge, his repeated expression was a gloomy bar and a dismissive humbug, showing the reader that he was mean-spirited. Here, however, he is a changed man who cheerfully cries "Hoop" and "Hello" and even "Merry Christmas." The onomatopoeia of "hoop" carries a sense of his joy, and the repeated exclamation marks add to the presentation of a man caught up in childlike joy. So remember, you're following what, how, why. What language device they use to show Scrooge is changed. Provide short, judicious quotations. Explain why Dickens chose to use these quotes. What does it tell you about how Scrooge has changed? And if you can, make a link to the context. So the explanation of why Scrooge behaves as he does, making a link to the social and historical context. So you get an even better mark there if you're referencing what the Victorian audience was supposed to learn from Scrooge's transformation. So here are a few quotes that you can use from Stave 5 to show his transformation. Scrambled out of bed, his voice is broken, his face is wet for tears. It was a splendid laugh, a most illustrious laugh. I'm as light as a schoolboy, as merry as a schoolboy. And you can use the sentence starters from the previous lessons to support your response. Good luck. At the end of last week, you should have completed your paragraphs on Stave 2 and 3 of the novella. So you were supposed to be talking about how Scrooge immediately begins to change after Marley's visit. So in Stave 2, he almost cries immediately as soon as he sees his younger self, and the solitary child neglected by his friends, abandoned of all help, which is Dickens' interpretation of the situation. And we talked about how you could link that back into Stave 1 because of the word solitary. So we can see that the solitary child becomes a solitary adult. So perhaps Scrooge is not completely to blame for his situation, and we do begin to feel some sort of sympathy for him. In Stave 3, Scrooge seems much more willing to learn from his experience. He's now submissive. He says he's learned a lesson that's now working on him, and he wants to profit by it. And we discussed the fact that even though he is beginning to transform into a better person, he still is missing the point. He wants to profit by it. He doesn't want society to profit by it. He individually wants to profit by it. So even though he's not quite there yet, he's beginning to change, and we very much see that when Scrooge sees the face of the surplus population in Tiny Tim, and he hung his head in shame. He's overcome with penitence and grief, so that we clearly see that Scrooge is beginning to transform in Stave 3. So you should very much have been tracking his burgeoning awakening, his burgeoning redemption. So today we are